Thanks for tuning in to another show in the Next Reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
The escape artist is over. There's a boy in the mailbox.
Was that your best Raúl Juliá?
I think we both know the answer to that question.
It was actually pretty good. But it was actually pretty good, though.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll workshop it.
I mean, it's no Raúl Juliá, but...
Only Raúl Juliá is Raúl Juliá, but come on. In the ballpark.
There you go.
Okay. This is The Escape Artist. Why are we talking about The Escape Artist, Andy?
Yeah, we're back to the Magicians series. This was a one-off ad that you threw in there, adding to our series that up until now had only included magician films from 2006. Weirdly, what a weird year for magician films that year.
How is that even true? I imagine Scoop was way older than that.
No. Yeah, they're all 2006.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think we missed the Burt Wonderstone movie, but otherwise, The Illusionist, The Prestige, Scoop. Yeah, and so now we're jumping back to 1982 with this, and it's, I'm just curious, as adding to that series, what was it about this particular film that drew you to it? Especially because it's kind of a rare find.
Yes, it is a rare find. How do you find films when you're Pete or Andy and you're looking to build a series? I really enjoy magician movies. I enjoy magician TV shows. I loved The Magicians. It is just something that I think it appeals to me. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to find some movies that we didn't talk about. And this one, I hadn't seen it. And it came with some acclaim. There was some real positive and sort of mystified commentary about this movie, and I thought this is one we probably need to talk about. And I think in my reckoning, having watched it, I agree. I am mystified why I missed this movie. This seems like it would have been right in my wheelhouse when it came out, and somehow I missed it. I love what they did with it. I love the practicality of the tricks. And I mean, Griffin O'Neal. Kid had presence.
Right. Yeah. Amazing to watch, especially considering how few films he did and how few films I've seen of his, and certainly trouble in his life for many various reasons that I'm sure we'll discuss.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated because, Caleb Deschanel, this was his, as an incredible cinematographer who had already done things with Coppola's team under like the kind of like that whole group of people shooting like The Black Stallion, which we've talked about on this show as part of our Melissa Matheson series, who also is involved in this because she co-wrote the screenplay based on the book. So I'm always curious when a cinematographer decides to step away from the camera and choose to direct, because there are a lot of examples where it doesn't go so well. And this is an interesting one because I think there's a lot going for it. Does it always work? Not necessarily, but it's actually a really interesting one, and it certainly deserves a look. I think it's worth people checking out.
I wrote on Blue Sky that this has very Harold and Maude vibes. If Maude is played by Raúl Juliá and locks a kid in a mailbox at knife point. If other than that, it is absolutely Harold and Maude. But you have to, you say does it always work? No. But you know what? It works more than it doesn't. And that's the thing that's that is kind of mystifying for me. I found myself, we talk about movies that trust you as an audience member to keep up, to figure out what's going on. It's not going to spend a whole lot of time, explaining to me what is happening in the movie. And I think this is one of them. I think it sets up this sort of arc fable, American fable, where we're riding along with this kid as he tries to follow in the footsteps of his now deceased dad, who was a magician. And he just ends up with an incredibly precocious ability to or prodigal ability to perform his own street magic in real time in the scope of capers, right? This is a long practical magic caper that he gets himself wrapped up in, and I think he just nails it. I think the other performances, and I'll say supporting performance, but I say that with a big footnote. Raúl Juliá is doing something really special in this movie, something I don't feel like I see in a lot of Raúl Juliá performances, and I love it. And at the end of the movie, I'm wondering, has this been the caper all along, that this movie was the sweet story of Raúl Juliá trying to figure out his relationship with his dad? The whole movie is fathers and sons. I mean, it really captures just so much of the stuff that I'm into.
I don't disagree with all of that. And I'm hoping as we walk through the film and talk about it that you can help me understand it a little more, because I found it to be a fascinating film. I really enjoyed it. I never could exactly figure out what it was trying to do or say. And I don't know if that's completely a problem, because I couldn't help but be like pulled in every turn by the film. Like, it always had me drawn in. I was always compelled by the story. But I just was always like, I just don't know what story they're actually trying to tell with the film here. And I think, this is one of the big American zoetrope films that Coppola got behind at this exact point in time. He was doing this. He was doing, I think, Wim Wenders' Hammett, and he was doing his own One from the Heart, and put a lot of money into them. And, he wanted a place that gave filmmakers their own freedom to do what they wanted without feeling like he needed to step in and fix things and make things better. And I think that, in many ways, I think that benefits the film, because I think Deschanel is able to kind of craft this thing that does, as you said, feel like a little bit of a fable. But at the same time, it never felt completely cohesive to me. And that's a struggle for me, because I did find it so interesting.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that confusion is probably the film's central problem, right? Because the film wants to be a coming-of-age fable, right? That the sort of archetypal stakes of this kid and his father. It wants to be a small-town corruption film, right? And I think Raúl Juliá is a great, very real, grounded threat in this movie. It wants to be a film about grief. It wants to be a film about a boy and his dead father. And secondarily, about a boy, Raúl Juliá, and his father who is in the process, the active process of disowning him. What did we say earlier? It wants to be a caper film, right? It wants to have escape sequences and theatrical suspense and scope and gravity. And I don't think those are necessarily incompatible ideals for the movie. But I do agree with you that Deschanel, he never really lands. I'll stick with gravity. He never really finds the gravity to keep them all in orbit of one another. So I kind of feel each of these forces, each of those stories pulling me in a different direction, and not a single one of them ever quite wins. And so the movie is emotionally coherent. It's atmospherically awesome. It always feels like itself, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what I'm feeling as I hear you talk about it is unstable. The movie is unstable to me in terms of where it's grounded. Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess. It's interesting because, Melissa Matheson, who co-wrote this, she worked on this based on David Wagner's book, and she co-wrote it with Steven Zito. It's an ampersand, so that means they wrote it together. They literally were kind of a collaborative writing pair. I haven't read the book. I'm unfamiliar with the source material. And so I don't know how much I'm pinning on their adaptation of the book, of the source material itself, or of how Deschanel captured it. But it felt like Deschanel had a good handle on how to put a scene together. but in the scope of a larger story, didn't have a handle of how to connect them. And so a lot of it just didn't feel as connected or cohesive. And so you say unstable, I might just say lacking cohesion, which I think, I think we could argue is very similar in kind of what we're going for there.
Yeah.
But it just seems like it wants to be like what Matheson did with The Black Stallion, where it felt like a kid's story, but more than a kid's story. It felt like a story that everybody could enjoy. Like it's a story for everybody, but it's about a kid. And it felt like they were going for the same thing here, even though I do want to chat a little bit about how old we're supposed to picture O'Neal as, because he shot it when he was 16. It came out 2 years later. He looks like he's 12. His voice doesn't seem like it's cracked. He was hanging out with Daly, and so I was like, what is the age difference going on here? She's already working as a waitress at a restaurant. I was like, what am I supposed to be thinking of how old this kid is? Because he seems really young. But anyway, it's a story about a young man. And I think that it's supposed to have that kind of Black Stallion for everybody sort of vibe, because it certainly feels that way. But over the course of the story, I never could quite figure out like where we were going with Danny. And I think that's the frustration that I had with it, as much as I still was drawn to it because it's fascinating. But and your point about fathers and sons, I think, is key, because like Stu is the one who seems to have the big emotional moment at the end when he gets mad at Danny for having done this whole elaborate trick of cracking Stu's dad's safe. Stu's dad is the mayor, the crooked mayor, planting the wallet in there that had been kind of the crux of much of our story, and taking evidence that then he turns to the FBI. And Stu is angry because he says it was his right as the son to do that to his father. And so that's the question that I walked away with. Like, was Stu meant to be the actual protagonist of the film? Because he seems to have kind of the actual arc, the emotional core at the center of the film.
That's fascinating. And I think it's a really productive question, because I think going back to the adaptation of the book, right, is this a failure of craft, or is the film actually being honest and adapting a movie that had this central problem, or a book that had this central problem? That's a big question. Neither of us obviously can answer it. I haven't read the book either. But I do think it's worth pressing that question. What is drawing you in? And does it even matter that those things don't cohere that well if the end result of the movie is one that you feel satisfied with? Like, for me, Deschanel's images, I think the camera is actually lovely, and you can tell that there's a real love of image and framing, and, once a cinematographer, always a cinematographer. I think Raúl Juliá and Griffin's performances are absolutely winning. De La Rue's score is fantastic. All of these things are operating at a higher level than the story they're serving, right? All of these things are better than the sum. And yet the craft of the overall experience I think makes this sort of hum. When we get to, talking specifically of the father and son narrative, when we get to the final sequence where Griffin, or Danny, I'll say, is escaping the prison, which was the sort of fabulous setup of the film. When he's escaping the prison and he sees the sort of flashback of his dad in the hallway, and his dad dead, covered in the shroud, and then he floats up, and Danny is able to pull the shroud, and his dad is gone. That sort of metaphorical release for a kid of that age, I think was particularly profound for me. I thought that was really lovely, and it explained any of the emotional confusion I might have had leading up to that story. What is he trying to accomplish? Is he just trying to accomplish, his dad's great tricks? Is he just trying to, where do they want this to land? And for me, that landed really hard. That last that experience of being with him in that hallway landed really hard. And maybe I'm that, like, my experience in that, 2 minutes of the film is putting outsized emphasis on the rest of the story, which is a little bit clumsy. But for me, it was quite a perfect bit.
Well, okay, so I'm curious then how you're reading his journey. Maybe we should just focus on Danny and his journey for a little bit before we get it clouded with the rest of the story, because it ends up, everything makes it even cloudier.
Okay.
My impression is, like, he's run away from his grandma where he had been living after, I did it say what happened to his mom? I can't remember, but we know his dad died and he's living with his grandma.
Well, his dad died his dad died, and the story was that his dad died from a, what was it, accidental, how did they say he died?
I can't remember. Did they say he died in the tank, or was it the prison escape that he was trying to do and got shot?
Well, and that was how he ended up dying. And that was the reveal at the end, which was Danny coming to terms with how his dad actually died, coming to terms with the truth of it. I thought it was that the story was that he died as a magician, and that was the story that his family was trying to tell him. And but he knew the truth anyway and was coming to terms with it in that final moment.
Okay, so but his mom, I guess the thing is, we don't know what happened to his mom.
Right.
Like, we don't know if she's around or whatever. I think what his uncle and aunt had said is that he died, and this is had always been the story, exactly how we see Danny test the tank, right? He drops into it, and his father got trapped in there and died in the tank. And then Danny, he runs away. He kind of moves in with his uncle and aunt, who are their own performers, very vaudevillian, kind of just doing their own little tricks. And she apparently is also a real psychic, which is kind of another little, I don't know, is it a magical realism element that's thrown into the story to make her a real psychic? I don't know. I was like, did it go too far?
That may have been the thing that I didn't care for the most. That was a hat on a hat.
Right. Might be going a little too far with this.
Yeah.
But it seems to be, as he pitches it, is like he wants to be as good or better than his dad, who he says was the best magician out there, second to Houdini. And his goal is to do that. And I guess the question that I have is, like, how do you read what his journey is? If he says that that's kind of what he's wanting to do, to be the best magician, to be better than his father, is it to actually find closure in what happened with his father in order to actually just get past all of that?
Yeah, I think you're describing it. I think that it could be anything. It's the fact that he's using magic as a way to find closeness to his dead father, a father that he didn't know well enough, that he never grew up to love and appreciate, but who died way too early. The fact that he's using magic to follow in his father's footsteps is really just an avatar for him being able to find some sort of closeness to this person that he didn't know but wants to badly. He needs this kid, if anybody needs a father figure, it's this kid, right? It's somebody to mold him and give him shape and give him structure, because he is an agent of chaos under his own agency. And so he is, I think, naturally exploring the life of his father to try and understand his dad in a way that he hasn't been able to before. And magic is the tool and the journey by which he is able to try to do that. By following in his footsteps, he's able to get to that point where his dad died and move through it. And the movie presents metaphor as literalism, right? He's able to go to the point where his dad died, remove the shroud, and walk through it, right? The only way out is through, is the message of Danny's journey. And I think that ends up being really a really special journey, right? I think Danny does offer us a bit of an arc as he's able to transcend all the sort of chaos of his experience and grow up.
I appreciate that that's the direction you're going with that. And I I see that and I feel that, like, it makes sense to me. I kind of gathered that was it. And yeah, I guess what we're meant to glean from that, and it sounds like this is your read on it. So I don't think I'm reaching to say this, but it sounds like subconsciously he had to have known what happened to his dad in order for any of the vision that he has while he's in the jail to make any sense. Because otherwise, he's just kind of creating his own fictional version of things in the prison. And perhaps that's also true as a way to, again, find closure. Maybe that's something that he envisions. Did his father, a magician, a very able magician, actually pull off an escape in prison, like pick the lock to get out and then get shot by the cop? I mean, why did the cop shoot him? Was he crooked? Was Danny's dad crooked? I don't know. I don't know, or if we're getting answers. And so it paints a situation that I guess just even if it is a resolution for Danny, I don't know if the film gives me enough to fully understand everything.
Yeah, I get it. For me, I was able to. I guess I was just so awash in that final experience as he's sort of reckoning with the death of Dad in the prison that I filled in a lot in my mind of what it took to get him there. Right, the fact that I believe he knew how his dad died. I believe that the mechanic of like the wallet. Okay, let's just take a second on the wallet, because the wallet is an interesting thing. The wallet is kind of an inciting event. It is a MacGuffin, sorta, and it's also a test, right? It's a test that he steals as part of performance to prove something about himself, to demonstrate his sort of skill inheritance that he's carrying from his dad, and that means the wallet has some thematic resonance that maybe a normal MacGuffin shouldn't have. And yet everything else about the movie to get Danny to his final reckoning with his dad and being able to move through his own grief has to do with that wallet being in the right place at the right time. And whether it's in the vault, whether it's hanging off of the escalator, whether it's, whether he's in jail to actually get Raúl Juliá into the other cell to make it his big performance, whatever the case may be. But all of those pieces of the puzzle serve to get him to that moment where he is standing in that hallway with the ghost of his dead dad. And that was okay for me.
But it's not the end of the film, and it's not the end of the wallet. And so that's where I think that metaphor or the weight put on the wallet gets a little fuzzy, because it's like, well, why is it still important? Like that moment with his dad, I mean, the way that, and this is where I think the confusion comes in, is because like the weight of the moment with his dad doesn't end up becoming like the final moment of the film. Like he's finally through his grief and he's able to move on. That ends up just being a step in the process of this escape routine that he does to get out of jail, only so he can get into the mayor's office, Stu's dad's office, because that's where the safe is and that's where the incriminating evidence is. And so he gets into the safe, leaves the wallet, takes the ledger, and then leaves, calls the FBI, and turns his dad in. And then he shows up at Stu's place after Stu is released from jail, and they have their confrontation. And so I guess like with that moment, essentially the moment of his dad and kind of working through it in whatever capacity is, it almost becomes the end of the second act. We still have a whole act left. And that's, I think, where some of my confusion with how the story is crafted comes from, because it feels like that's the moment that should be our climactic moment of the film, but it's really just like an act turn to get us into the final section.
Yeah. I think that's a fair assessment, and I think what it allows us to do is demonstrate that Danny is able to, at that moment, transcend his dad's, the grief of his dad, and come into his own agency. And the rest of the movie is him acting as an agent of himself, of his own, him acting and taking ownership and demonstrating skill that, we only saw teased in the first half of the movie, but demonstrating skill, being able to think 15 steps ahead, whether he's going to put the wallet in the vault, take the records out of the vault. He climbs out of a manhole cover, running around the sewers. Did Dad ever run around the sewers? I don't think so. And I think that's part of his journey, is being able to move that part forward. And by the end, when he goes to Stu's apartment and Stu ends up betraying him at knife point, he's able to take off and run out into the street and get away. He gets away because Stu ends up being incidentally arrested. He wakes up. It's a brand new day. He climbs out of the mailbox that he had locked himself in, and he's able to move on with his new day as this new guy. I like that message.
Yeah, but and I understand your point, but a lot of the wallet stuff and a lot of this stuff happens also before the whole thing in the jail with his dad. Like, there's so much setup for it. So it's hard to say that he works through everything that he needs to internally so that he can pull all this off, when like the first chunk of the film is also the same thing.
Well, I don't think it's the same. I think it scales up in his skill. And it's okay for the wallet to change purposes halfway through the experience of the wallet. Like at the beginning, it was a trick or a scam or something or a test, something to get him, to prove his skills. And at the end, it's something to own the mechanic of the crime and be able to resolve the crime. It's okay for me for that to, at the moment he ends that experience with his dad, for the purpose of the wallet to suddenly change.
It changed before that. He'd already kind of figured all that out. When he went to the mayor's office with Stu, he was already scoping out behind the curtains. He was already plotting where he was going to hide the wallet. He hides the wallet in the scene. Like, we see him tie the little string around it and hide it in the elevator.
Awesome.
All during that sequence. So all of this is before the moment he gets in jail. And so that's where I struggle with the mechanic of all of that, because I just feel like it's a story about a kid who's finding a way through his feelings about his own father. Yes, I see that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a film about Stu, and I mean, there's absolutely the same father-son story there. Why does he steal the wallet in the first place? We'll get to that. But like, we have this other father-son story that is interrupted by Danny, who comes into it and inadvertently, I don't know, ends up taking on what Stu was trying to do. I'm not exactly sure, but it becomes a different story. And so I see how you're reading it, but I can't help but feel like it feels like two stories that cross paths with each other, but never quite cohesively again connect in a way that feel like it's one story told, and all of these parts are working together to tell the story.
I can hold both of those perspectives in my head at the same time. That I feel like in isolation, this is Danny's, grief story with his dad. And in the context of the story, I also agree with you. I think that when these stories collide, there is an unclear mechanism as to how these things are supposed to work together, in particular in Stu's story. I am left unclear around Stu's story more than Danny's. And maybe I just attune to the emotional arc of Danny's experience more than I do of Stu's, even though all of those beats seem very, very clear when they've got some stuff. When he throws his dad, pushes him over in the chair, well, they've got issues.
Yeah, they definitely have some issues.
Nobody does that to Desi Arnaz.
Right.
And lives to tell the tale.
No kidding.
That's like Latin Frank Sinatra right there, Desi Arnaz.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but first, you can find the show on YouTube, and you can join us live when we record. We will even take your questions in the post-show chit-chat. It's live. Everyone is welcome. And members get the replay and the extended cut. Subscribe to The Next Reel on YouTube. The link to this episode is in the show notes. We'll be right back.
You know what the Next Reel family of film shows actually is? It's not just shows you keep up with. It's a place you come back to.
The Next Reel's film-by-film conversations. CinemaScope's deep dives into movements and genres. The Film Board on whatever's in theaters. Movies We Like's craft conversations. Sitting in the Dark's horror breakdowns. It's all here, waiting.
If that sounds like how you already spend your time browsing, discovering, going back to something you bookmarked months ago, consider becoming a member.
For $5 a month or $55 a year, you get early ad-free access to all 5 shows a full week before they go public, plus exclusive bonus content that doesn't live anywhere else.
Think of it as your library card. Head to truestory.fm/join. That's truestory.fm/join. And sign up today.
The Next Reel family of film shows. The conversation is already here. Come find your next film. I want to go back to the point I was just bringing up about this other father-son relationship that we have between Stu and his dad, Desi Arnaz, the corrupt mayor. You were just talking about how volatile, like there's clearly issues in this story. How do you read the fact that when we meet Stu in the magic shop with Terry Garr, who is always brilliant in everything she does and definitely underutilized in this film, why had he stolen the wallet? Why did he already have it? Did he know it was full of this money from this illegal deal his dad was doing? Was he actively starting to put a plan in place to actually like turn his dad in? Is that how much he hates his dad? Because his dad, the relationship with his dad? Does he feel trapped by his dad and it was a test to maybe steal it but then get back into his good graces? Like, how did you read Stu's story and what his intentions are as we find out about this wallet?
Man, it's such a good question. And it's trouble because I think in watching the movie, I was so fixated on Danny that I don't think I was attuned enough to Stu's experience. Because when you think about it, they're mirror images. Stu and Danny are mirrors of one another, right? Both are sons that are entirely defined by their fathers, right? Danny's father is dead and completely mythologized. Stu's father is alive and incredibly powerful and deeply corrupt. And Stu gets to just sort of hide behind his dad's name and authority, and he uses that sort of camouflage and resents it in equal measure, right? He is conflicted because he needs it because of his lifestyle. He needs to be able to hide behind his dad's name, but also he wants to be his own man. That's kind of my initial take on this character. He develops this sort of, I don't know, this initial behavior, like he doesn't need the money, but he ends up sort of going through that same ritual that Danny does, right? That he's connecting to his dad with the only language that the two of them share, which is crime, right? He steals the wallet from his dad. He lifts the wallet from his dad because of looking for a connection and trying to find out if his inheritance is real, if he, where Danny's looking to see if his inheritance of magic from his dad is real, if Stu's inheritance of being a crime boss is real, and kind of using it as a way to puncture his dad's, I don't know, false authority over him that he has just sort of accumulated over years. And that ends up being, I think, even more of a tragedy. So, in fact, Danny stealing the wallet from Stu, which Stu already stole from his dad, is interrupting Stu's own process of learning to relate to his dad.
It's complicated and it's confusing. And I think I can see a lot of what you're saying, but I think the other elements that complicate that even further is Stu sees in Danny an expert safecracker. Like somebody who can actively actually get into the safe that's in Dad's office. He takes him there specifically to kind of tell him where the safe is so that Danny knows, because Stu has a plan. We don't know what it is, but he has a plan. And at the end, again, he's so mad at Danny because Danny took away his opportunity to bring down his own father. And I guess that's where it gets confusing for me, because it's like, was he trying to figure out, like, I mean, we meet him in a magic shop. Why is he in a magic shop? Is he, and clearly he'd been there before, because as Jackie Coogan says, oh, these people, they're always giving me trouble. Like, clearly he's there often enough to be giving me trouble. I don't know if they're just like, if it's like a Godfather sort of situation, that the way the mayor runs things, where his son goes out and collects money from people to keep them safe sort of situation.
That's what it felt like to me, yeah.
Yeah. But it's a magic shop, and still it's like, is he there because he wants to learn how to lockpick and get into his own father's safe so that he can steal the evidence and turn his father in and make good and prove to the world that he's the good one?
I think that's as good a suggestion as any. I think that's exactly right.
Well, I mean, that's kind of where I go, but I don't know if, because Stu also doesn't seem to be good.
Yeah.
It muddles that. And it makes me go, is that his motivation? I don't know. And that's it. It makes it confusing.
Well, and I think you're right on it. And that moment in the magic shop is really great for Danny's story, because he gets to explore his sort of first definitive act of self-definition, right? He gets to steal that wallet from Stu and say in the act, I'm not impressed by you, and here's how I'm going to prove it. I'm going to steal this thing from you. I'm not impressed by your threats. I'm not impressed by anything you have. And the turn is that Stu could have been Danny's complete kind of mirror. We could have really explored that relationship with he and his father, and why he was motivated to go to the magic shop, and why he was poking away at his dad's legacy. The film sort of tries to be about these two kinds of father and son inheritances, and it absolutely loses its nerve with Stu's half of the argument. It is an incomplete argument. And I finished the movie, it's like, an hour, 34 minutes? Like, it is a tight film. And I came away from this movie thinking, I think it could be 20 minutes longer, and I would have been really happy. I think we could have gotten a little bit more of that exploration of how these two men are dealing with the legacy of their fathers and how they tie together. No matter what, we're all going through this with the relationship with our dads. I mean, I think that's what the movie explores, and that's where it lets us off incompletely.
Well, it's funny. This is a film that was shot in 1980 when Griffin O'Neal was 16 years old. And then they spent 2 full years editing, re-editing, tweaking, retweaking, adjusting, readjusting, trying to figure out how to tell this story the right way. It didn't get released until 1982, when Griffin was 18. And it makes me wonder, with 2 years to figure this out, why does it still feel so muddled? I mean, it's a fascinating film, and I enjoyed my time with it, but I walked away going, it's confusing. I don't know what it was trying to say or do, and it could have used some passes to find the clarity. I mean, geez, if Coppola was throwing money around, do some reshoots or whatever, like build something in to help find the connective tissue to really make this story work, because I just feel like there's so many interesting directions that it's going, and I feel like it never ties together as perfectly as it should. Now, it's not necessarily a problem. I think that it makes for an interesting exploration for sure, but it does make these conversations trying to like figure out what it's saying, what its themes are, a little murky.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the era taking 2 years to make this movie, and then you layer onto that the real life relationship that Griffin was struggling with Ryan O'Neal, his dad, and it's like you can watch Griffin go through this same arc with his own dad, trying to come to terms with his relationship with his father. And I mean, he calls Ryan O'Neal, I'm just on Wikipedia right now, but he was a very abusive, narcissistic psychopath. He gets so mad he can't control anything he's doing. He was, in 1983, Griffin O'Neal reports to authorities that his father punched out 2 of his front teeth, but he decided not to press charges. I mean, it's definitely more the Stu-Mayer relationship than Harry and Danny, but it's definitely a father-son struggle writ large. I think that's fascinating.
And his dad got him on drugs at a young age.
Yep.
I mean, he was a complete mess. And none of this is like even getting to the point several years later when he was working on the Coppola film, Gardens of Stone, I believe, and that's where he was involved in the boating accident that took Coppola's son's life. So, yeah, I think this is an example of somebody who is raised in an abusive, dark situation who ends up leading a very dark and messed up life, and it shows throughout his life and situations that arise from it, and it definitely shows in his performance. You can definitely get a sense, and it's quiet and it's subtle. Like, it's not an overt father-son story that he's dealing with. Like, he's a quiet performer, even though he's like incredibly compelling to watch. Like, it's mesmerizing to watch this 16-year-old kid performing amazing magic tricks. Ricky Jay, I'm surprised you haven't called that name out as the person who actually trained him on all this magic, considering how much you're in love with Ricky Jay.
I love Ricky Jay so much.
Yeah.
Well, and let's say Deschanel's strategy around this and having Ricky Jay teach this kid all of these feats of prestidigitation, like the timing of the escape experiences is perfect. Right? The tension that they build in these sequences because they let the kid perform them for real, right? He's really picking locks. He's really doing these things because he learned how to do it. Seems like a dangerous set of skills to put in the hands of Griffin O'Neal, but that's what they were doing on set, is letting him actually figure out how to do this stuff. And I thought that worked so incredibly well. So from a filmmaking perspective, man, I loved the sequences that put us in the tension of the sleight of hand, of the magic, of the lockpicking. It worked for me. And maybe that's another thing that keeps me engaged. Every one of those beats is just another beat I can coast on, through any of the confusing stuff to the next beat.
Well, and yeah, the magic bits, they smartly shot like the bulk of those like in one take, it's a oneer. And so you're there, unlike like Now You See Me or something, which is just full of cuts and everything. And it's obviously just digital with all the tricks that they're doing. Like, they're doing some real things here. And like when the father floats up and then disappears, like, it's like, this is another of those magic tricks that you see on stages. And now they're actually doing it here in the film where, you see him pull the sheet off of his father, played by young Harry Anderson, another magician in his own right, who also, this is his first feature film, and then he puts the sheet back on, he floats up, and then he takes the sheet off, all in one take, and it's flawless. Like, the way they pull this stuff off, like, really kind of blows my mind, and it consistently happened. And again, as you said, that's probably one of the reasons that I just found the film so compelling and fascinating to watch and be part of, because we were watching stuff unfold really in front of us.
Yeah, really special. And it's in part of the there's a little bit of tragedy in making this a magic movie that is so focused on practicality, because like cinema, the language of cinema is so versed in fakery. You go into a movie immediately not trusting what you're seeing because, of course, there are visual effects, there are things that they're, taking out of the scene, but this movie has, notoriously little of that. And when it was made, the technology to do that was nascent at very best. And so this movie relied on, practical magic. And I think it ends up being transcendent in that regard. If in no other way, it's transcendent there.
Well, and you mentioned Georges Delerue, who composes the music, and his music, I mean, it's beautiful score, and it fits that exactly, like that kind of that natural unfolding of these tricks and everything. It kind of creates a space that feels, it has a whimsy to it already, which I think ties into the world of magic that we're getting here.
Yeah, Georges Delerue is a pretty special composer, and he's how many films does he have? I think over 300 films in his catalog, and still died young, right? I mean, he's just an incredible composer, and has such a wonderful voice for this movie. It made me think of, it reminded me so much of Marvin Hamlish's score for The Informant, where the music itself so elevates what you're seeing on screen. Right. It so transcends the story. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Did you ever see Crusoe, the other film that Caleb Deschanel directed?
No,
it was
I didn't. Did you?
Aidan Quinn, I remember so much, like the box cover, the poster and everything from video stores. I never watched it though. And so I don't know how it is, but it is interesting that Deschanel, who really directed only these two films, and yeah, so I don't know why. I don't know enough about him. I've never read anything. Like, is it just something he did just for fun, just to try it out, or was it because the experiences he wasn't happy with, and so it just stuck with working as a cinematographer afterward?
But for our purposes, it would be an easy series to complete.
Yeah, right. One more, absolutely. We haven't really mentioned, this is weirdly an interesting film that had a big cast of some famous faces, where this was kind of like their last film. Jackie Coogan, Desi Arnaz, we've mentioned those two, but also Joan Hackett and Gabriel Dell, who are another two. And then we also have Huntz Hall. Gabriel Dell and Huntz Hall were both Dead End kids from, when was that? Like the 30s or something? Like, it was a long time where they were acting, doing that. And a lot of these people, it's like their last opportunity to be on screen. I mean, obviously that wasn't designed that way. That would be a little weird, but
that would be sociopathic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating that we had so many faces in this film. Like, what an interesting choice. And I mean, it really boils down to the casting decisions on Deschanel's part to bring in a lot of these faces. Like, seeing Jackie Coogan as the owner of the magic shop was kind of a treat,
Yeah, it really was. It was kind of an interesting little murderer's row of these fun faces. For me, it was Desi Arnaz. I mean, just seeing Desi Arnaz in this role, that moment when he's pushed over in the chair and he stands up and gets all fiery, I was just so excited for Desi to be Desi.
Yeah, Lucy never pushed him over in a chair.
Lucy never pushed him over, yeah. Oh, she pushed him around, though. Oh, she had some splaining to do.
To push him around. It's an interesting one. Do you know much about the Dead End Kids, this acting troupe from the 30s?
I don't.
So it was a group of kids in New York City brought onto Broadway to play a play called Dead End, and it was popular, and so the producer brought all the kids to Hollywood to make a movie of it, and it turned so popular that they kind of continued making movies as this group of kids, sometimes under the Dead End Kids or the Little Tough Guys or the East Side Kids or the Bowery Boys. And they were doing movies as this group from the late 30s into the late 50s. Like, they had 20 years of like doing these movies, to the point where they were so well known. The group made 89 films together, 3 serials, under 4 different studios during a 21-year career. They, as a group, have their own Hollywood, or a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
How is this the first time I'm hearing about this?
Right?
We've been doing this show alone for 15 years. How is this the first time that we've talked about these guys?
It's crazy. Hunts Hall, who we have in here, is in every incarnation in the series of films. And Gabriel Dell was the final and third of the original 6 Dead End kids to appear in all incarnations of the gangs. So, yeah, Gabriel Dell is the uncle, and Hunts Hall is, I don't know who Turnkey was. I can't remember who Turnkey was.
It's fascinating, and you can see over the generations that followed, you can see efforts of Hollywood to try to recreate these groups of kids who are in the same movies over and over, from Rat Pack to Brat Pack to,
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you call the one that came after? I don't know, but there's always a group.
They keep doing them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. And did you see director Gary Marshall? He shows up as a drummer in here.
Pretty fun, right?
It's fascinating.
It's really interesting. Caleb Deschanel, what an interesting guy to have that kind of pull, right? To be able to say, we're going to, and part of it is, and maybe this is the quiet example or the quiet explanation of why he didn't direct more. It's because he was already one of the best in the world at this other job, right? Like the natural and the right stuff and being there. Like, he's already doing an incredible job at this one thing, but he's also come across paths with all of these people to the point where they trust him enough to come and be in this first foray for him in the director's chair. And I think that says so much about him and his capability and his skill and his temperament to be able to have those kinds of relationships. At least that's my headcanon about Deschanel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks about him, but I think it also speaks about Coppola, because as the producer and under the American Zoetrope Studios banner, I think that ties into it quite a bit.
It's not like they're beating people away with a stick.
They would be after
Yes.
these big flops, but oh my gosh.
Wow.
All right.
Well, and let's just say, big fan of Deschanel's offspring, Emily Deschanel, Bones, and of course Zoe, as both a musician and New Girl and
an elf lover.
They both have made quite a statement in their own right, in spite of being Nepo babies.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I guess that's it. So we're going to move on to the back half. First, let's take a quick break.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Tsabutan, Ian Post, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show and our full archive at thenextreel.com. You can follow us from there too and learn about membership. Check out our merch store at thenextreel.com/merch. And if your app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. How'd it do at the box office?
Well, for Deschanel's directorial debut, all I could find is that of the 3 films that Coppola started pushing through American Zoetrope at this time, Hammett, with a budget of $7 million, and One from the Heart, with a budget that started at $27 million, this one is generally thought to be more modest. But that's it. I couldn't find any actual specifics. The movie opened May 28th, 1982, the start of Memorial Day weekend here in the States, opposite a big one, Rocky III, one that we've certainly talked about. Guess which one took the number 1 spot?
But was it close?
It wasn't even close. This opened in 17th place. And with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan and Poltergeist the following week, and E.T. after that, this really did not have a chance to make a mark on the box office. In the end, the movie only earned $143,000 or $470,000 in today's dollars. And even though I don't know what it cost to make, I guarantee this was yet another box office bust for Coppola's new studio.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is shocking.
Yeah, it's funny because to your point, if this was a film that I had seen like playing on HBO when I was a kid, I would have been totally engrossed and mesmerized,
Yes.
just like I was the Black Stallion. Like it fits that box for me of something that a young person can easily just tap into and connect with. Like it's really interesting.
Oh man, I would have gone deep down the rabbit hole of card tricks off of this movie.
Oh, you wouldn't be podcasting. You would be working as a magician.
I'd be a deadbeat magician. That's what I would be.
Magician, yeah.
Deadbeat magician. Well, I've got to say, I recognize all of the quibbles coming from your side of the table. I really do. And I think you're right about every one of them. And even still, I love this movie probably more than it deserves. I had a blast. I'm so glad to have seen this.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. I do enjoy the film, despite not being able to really pin so much of the story down. Like, so much of it still feels like I'm still puzzling over it, which maybe is a good thing. Maybe it's going to make me want to watch it again. There's flaws. The script is murky and kind of messy. It doesn't really earn the themes that I think it's trying to say, but there is something honest in it. And I like that. And, you know, for my money, Deschanel proves that he can direct a film and that not all cinematographers turn into crappy filmmakers. We've certainly had our share of those.
Yes, we have.
All right. Well, that is it for our conversation about Caleb Deschanel's The Escape Artist. Next week, new series, Pete. Another one of yours, The Thinking Machines. We start with Colossus, the Forbin project from 1970, in which a supercomputer achieves consciousness and immediately decides humanity needs to be managed. Feels kind of familiar, huh?
It's the paperclip conundrum writ large. I can't wait.
That's right. Well, that's next week right here on The Next Reel. So let's do our ratings.
Letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find all of the films that we have talked about, rated, reviewed across the Next Reel family of film podcasts, and gives us a chance to ask Andy, what are you going to do for this movie?
I find it hard to go higher than 3 stars for this. It's fascinating. It's messy. It's muddled, but it's incredibly compelling. And I think a lot of that is our 2 leads. They just make this so easy to watch. So 3 stars and absolutely a heart. It still is just a really interesting film that I genuinely enjoy and would be interested to watch again.
Oh man, I think I'm going to go 4 stars.
Look at you.
4 stars and a heart, of course. This movie, I think, gave me something that I didn't expect. Maybe it's, dealing with dead dad trauma is something that's still in my wheelhouse. I don't know. But it definitely hit me in a place that I did not expect, and I am deeply engaged by. So I'm thrilled to have it on the list, in spite of its flaws. 4 stars and a heart, for sure.
All right. Well, that averages out to 3.5 stars and a heart on our account over on Letterboxd. You can find us there at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about The Escape Artist? This is an interesting one. I'd love to get more people to watch this one and definitely hear your thoughts. You can hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth Andrew,
as Letterboxd always doeth.
All right. It's an interesting set of reviews, generally favorable on this movie. I'm surprised. Maybe I'm not surprised.
Well, and also, I mean, it's only been seen, marked as seen by 810 members, so it's not...
Which does check out, right?
Yeah.
All right. Where'd you go? Where'd you go for yours?
I landed on a 4-star by Donkey Kong Killscreen, who has this to say. And I'm particularly curious because this ties into an upcoming series that we're going to be talking about. Kitty Matinee House of Games is the best way to describe this gem. This should be rediscovered immediately, a somewhat family-friendly con artist / heist film about growing up and trying to live up to your own expectations. There's Harry Anderson, card tricks by Ricky Jay, who taught O'Neal everything he knew, and probably the best Raúl Juliá performance I've ever seen. An early highlight for me this year, and sadly, also more evidence of how Terry Garr's career was constantly sabotaged.
Man.
House of Games.
Terry Garr. We didn't even mention Terry Garr is in this movie.
I mentioned her. I said she was underutilized in the magic shop. Yeah.
Do you know what? She's also underutilized in this podcast.
That's true. We need more Terry Garr.
Love her. I ended up with 3.5 stars from Film Bart, which I think really captures our experience with the film. It can never quite get its narrative cards in order, but everything else about this movie is so alluring. For long stretches, mostly the time given over to trickery and illusion, it can be absolutely spellbinding. And it's nice to be reminded that George Delarue and Stephen H. Boorem are all-time masters of their respective crafts.
Yes, absolutely. We didn't mention Boorem as the cinematographer here working with Deschanel, but should have, because another great cinematographer.
We really should have. Yeah, speaking of an incredible talent in his own right.
Yeah. I just have to also call out one line from Jake Isgar's review talking specifically about Griffin O'Neal. My dude is 17, looks about 12, carries himself like he's 35. I think that's absolutely true. Like,
yes.
This kid looks like he's so young, but I mean, it seems like an adult. It's really incredible to watch him here.
He is. He's great. Incredible. Thanks, Letterboxd.